If you remember a few years ago, we made that Probius robot, that remote control thing we brought to BlizzCon. Well, I made that move around by building it on this 1/10 scale RC truck. Nothing special, I got it off of Amazon. It worked great for that project. I've got a new project that's gonna operate on the same principle, and I'm so pumped. Ever since I watched this episode of Futurama, Season 2, Episode 7, Ahead in the Polls, where Bender sells his body and attaches his head to a little car for exactly one scene, I knew I needed to make that, and I thought I could build it on my little RC car. So I started by trying to figure out the scale of this thing. According to the character model sheet, Bender is 5'6", and that would make the car a certain length. And it turns out this 1/10 scale car is actually too small. So I bought something a little bigger. This is a 1/6 scale radio controlled truck, and it turns out it is the perfect scale for Bender's little car. Why don't we take a closer look at what we have here and what we've got to work with. I picked this thing up used on eBay for like 300 bucks, which seemed like a pretty good bargain. There's a lot I'm not gonna need. The shell here we're gonna completely replace. I don't need the spoiler, so that'll get deleted as well. I'm gonna do completely custom tires and rims to better match with the way it looks in the show. But other than that, I think we can use pretty much everything that we have here. The stock body rests on these little pegs. There's 2 on the front and 2 on the back. And I think we can make our Bender car shell fit right on top of those. We'll just have to figure out how to build a 3D model that fits exactly on those. I think what I'm gonna do is 3D scan this whole thing to get us pretty close, and then take measurements with calipers so that we can get it more precise. Before doing any work in the 3D realm, I've opened up everything here in Inkscape. I have a bunch of reference images of Bender and his little car. I've even started sketching some side view of it. And the scale is really good. In fact, the width here of the real chassis is really, really good. However, the length is not. My RC truck here is quite long compared to how squat Bender's little car is. Now I could elongate the model to fit my chassis, or I can shorten the chassis to fit inside of the model, or at least get it closer. And I think that's what I have to do. I think that'll just make it look a lot more true to the cartoon. So the first thing I'm doing in this project is cutting my car in half. Look how squat it is. I love it. This was an adventure. I had to do a little bit of tinkering. I made a new drive shaft for it. Everything seems to be pretty good. I've thrown the tires back on it so I can give it a test drive. Let's go play. Looks like it's working just fine. Perfect. All right, now I can 3D scan it again, get some better references, and start modeling the body for it. Now that I've shortened my chassis and I know what I'm working with, I can start doing the 3D design. And I've actually started in 2D here in Inkscape. I've overlaid images of my truck body with images from the show, these screenshots. I've had to fudge the shape a little bit to get it close to the final result, but I think we're there. Now I'm going to use this along with a 3D scan of the car chassis inside of Fusion to start modeling the body. In Fusion, you can see I've imported canvases, so the side view we have all lined up there with some nice clean outlines for the car body. And then if I go to the front view, we can see much the same. But I've also dropped this 3D model, this scanned 3D model of our car right in there. So I can build around that to get things pretty close. Eventually I'll have to take some more specific measurements from the car body to get it to work, but at least I can get it pretty close. And I'm seeing some spots like up where the pegs are going to connect on top of the car body where I'm going to have to add a little more mass so that it actually fits. I can also modify these pegs or attach it a different way if I feel like I have to. I can hide the canvases and we can take a peek. This is what our chassis looks like, the 3D scan. Again, it's not super accurate, but it's going to help get us an idea of what it'll look like in 3D space when we're building the body around it. For the 3D modeling, the folks over at 3D Connection actually reached out after we did a video on 3D modeling a few months back and sent us one of their space mice. It's both a computer mouse, a really nice computer mouse, and a 3D mouse. And this is for navigating a 3D space like Fusion 360. And it's really cool. It takes a bit of practice. It's kind of like flying a drone one-handed, and it's my left hand, my non-dominant hand. So it's taking some getting used to. I've been using this for a few projects, and it's pretty cool. It gives you a huge amount of fine control on your view. This is something I've struggled with in Fusion 360 using a traditional mouse, getting really, really refined moves when you're viewing your 3D object. I think it's super cool for anyone who does a lot of 3D modeling. It works on your 3D slicing software. It works in your 3D CAD software. Super useful. So I'll be using this while I 3D model my car body today, and it should be super helpful. For the modeling, I've got a ton of reference images, not just the front side views. I also have some perspective views here. In the show, it's clear that they used a 3D model for some of the shots, and for some of the other shots, they just hand drew it. So the proportions change a little bit from shot to shot. Having a perspective view like this to keep as a reference is going to be really helpful as I move forward. I've got my tools and everything ready to roll. I have my references lined up. All I have to do now is put on some music, dive into the CAD world, and start modeling the car body. Let's go. I've been working at the 3D model for a couple of days now, and just wanted to pause to point out that I hope you don't think I'm like the best at this and that I nail it on the first try. This has taken me a couple of tries to get to a place where I'm like 95% happy with it. I looked up some tutorials on modeling car bodies, and it seems like in Fusion 360 a lot of people like to use surface modeling, which is different than solid modeling, which is what I normally do. So I've been slowly learning that. In fact, I built about half of this thing and then I decided to redo it because what I had learned in the process of building it meant that if I started from scratch, I would have a much better time building something that was a lot easier to work with. So this has taken me a couple of tries, and then each feature on the car I've done and redone a handful of times. But I'm at a place where I am, like I said, 95% happy with this. I can massage a couple of details once I've printed the part and get it all the way to 100%. Next thing I have to do is add a few more features like the headlights and the taillights. But first I need to figure out how I can attach this printed car shell to the radio controlled car chassis, and I have some ideas. My first thought was to have the car shell rest on the pegs from the RC car. This is how the stock body fit right on here. I even went so far as to print a little test piece to make sure I would get the dimensions correct on any sort of attachment. That looks really, really great, but I don't think I'm going to do it that way because once there's a shell on here, there's no way to reach these. The original one had these poking out of the shell, and I don't want that. So I think instead, I'm going to use the place where these things are mounted. It turns out these pegs can be adjusted up or down by unscrewing them and moving them, but there are these two screw holes that I can use to attach my own custom bracket that could then be screwed into from the cockpit of the car from the outside. That way I'd be able to unscrew those and pop the whole shell off if I ever need to get in and change anything. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'll take some measurements on this and design a bracket maybe that can slide up or down, give myself a little bit of flexibility as far as how high the chassis will ride. So I'm going to head back to the computer and get the rest of those parts modeled. The first things I printed are these brackets here to hold the body. They've got slots so that they can be adjusted up or down, and they get screwed right into these holes. There's even another pair in there, so I can have 4 screws holding this on. It should be nice and secure. I'll just put it on with a couple right now so that we can test if it's going to work. 1 and 2. And if I snug these up just a little bit, I have quite a bit of play as far as the height of this. Once I have the body on here and the wheels on here, I'll be able to adjust where it rides. But for now, we can just get these secured in place so that we can eventually put the body on there and see how they fit. This one has a slight angle to it because it's tilted back. It looks pretty good. Now it'll get the same treatment, just a pair of screws right now for holding it in. Next thing to print, of course, is the entire body. It's huge. I had to cut it up into 8 pieces, but I was able to print all of the parts on our 2 Prusa machines. We have a Mark 3.5 and a Mark 4, and the prints turned out great. I decided to try PETG with this one. Unfortunately, I only had 1 roll and I needed more. Fortunately, I keep a 3D printing nerd in my closet and he was able to hook me up with a few more rolls. Thanks, Joel. And here are all of the parts. They're big. This thing is a bit of a monster. I am so happy with how these parts turned out. The printing went really well. I didn't have any total failures. I did learn a little bit. This surface was touching down on the build plate and I didn't have a brim around it and it started to peel up. So I got a little bit of a lip here. I'll be able to sand that down, no problem. But subsequent prints, I had it put a brim all the way around the edge that was resting on the build plate and that kept it locked down for the duration. Each of these prints took between 10 and 12 hours. I also modeled in some tiny holes for registration pegs, and that worked pretty well. But on areas where it was touching the build plate, they seem to have mostly vanished. I'm wondering if I sand that a little bit, I'll be able to get them back. And that's just so we have pegs that help align everything when we put them all together. Next step then is to just start gluing all of these parts together. I think I'm going to use super glue to get started, and then probably a little bit of soldering iron and some spare filament to fill in the gaps along all these seams. Let's get started. There's a lot of super glue on my fingers. But we did it! It is all together now. Look at it! It's huge! I'm gonna have my work cut out for me fairing all these parts and filling the gaps and everything. It isn't a perfect fit, but it is really, really good. And I'll work on like sanding and filling and finishing all this in subsequent videos. That'll probably be going on in the background as I work on the other mechanical parts of this thing. Speaking of other parts, I also have some of the detail bits. This is the windshield, or will become the windshield. That should slide right in there. Look at that. There's a slot here for a piece of plastic to go. We'll figure that out eventually. And then we've got headlights and tail lights. And these will be finished separately, painted separately, and then glued in. I even got some LEDs to go in here so it'll light up. But that's a project for a different day. For today, I want this to fit on the car body. Oh, it's a little more snug than I was expecting. You can kind of force it in there a little bit, but I think I have to amend my my brackets. But that's kind of what we're going for right there. That looks really good. This surface should be behind. It should be like that, but it's obviously too tight. I need to lose about 8 millimeters there on this piece. And I can go in and just edit the 3D model and print it again. Or okay, second fit test. Let's see here. That looks pretty good. These will eventually get screwed in with heat set inserts. I got the fit on these right, but instead of using these modified versions, I did go back and updated the models and printed new ones that are all nice and finished. So we can install the heat set inserts into these and then get everything put together. These are the heat set inserts I've got. They're for M4 screws. They're designed to be melted into a piece of plastic and then to stay put. I did a little test here to figure out what diameter would work really well, and I've got it all dialed in. All we have to do now is get these installed. I'm using this hot knife with an appropriately shaped tip screwed in there. I've also set it to only the half temperature on here, or what I think is the half temperature. Apparently you don't want this to get too hot. You can goof up your thing, but I did a test and I'm feeling pretty confident. Just set it in there and it'll heat up the insert. until the plastic is pliable enough to just go right in. Look at that. Nice and gentle. And there's knurls on there that are two different knurls facing in opposite directions so that it can't unthread. It can't be unscrewed. That is in there. Oh, this is fun. Look at that. Boy, it looks really clean. Now we can put what are hopefully the last pieces semi-permanently on the frame. Now everything goes on. Oh, that fits so well now. Now these holes in the body can line up with the heat set inserts and we can attach it. Now I have a quick and easy way to take the body off of the chassis without having to like dig inside of this thing or go under it. That is most of the body solved. It is attached to the chassis. The wheels are centered for the most part. They look as close as I'm ever gonna get them. And that's that part. I do have a ton of work left to do, but this was a huge hurdle and I'm so pumped to have it done. Oh, let's get our bender. Let's give him a little platform. Let's rotate him towards you. Here's our cardboard analog bender. And that's what he's gonna look like. That's what he's gonna look like when it's all done. Oh, I'm so excited. I can't wait to build this whole thing. Ah, this is what it's all about. This is a wild idea I've had in my head for years, and I'm so pumped to finally be executing on it. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said, this is gonna be a series ongoing for the next few months, maybe. I have no idea how long it's gonna take. All I know is I'm having a really good time and I cannot wait to share that process with you. Thanks again to our pal Joel for hooking me up with this delicious orange PETG filament. It worked great. Gonna have a lot of sanding in my future, but that's what we're all about around here. Hey, I wanna thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you're looking forward to the next few bits of this series. And I especially wanna thank the members of our Extra Credit Club for supporting what we do with their hard-earned money. We appreciate everything you've done for us this last decade, I think. It's been a while, and we couldn't have done it without you. So thanks so much for your support. It means the world to us. I'll have a link down below if you want to join and get access to all our videos early. That'll wrap it up for this installment. I have a lot more work to do. I think I'm going to start working on the wheels next so that we can see what this thing looks like when it's driving around. That's it for me in the shop today. Thanks again, and happy crafting. So I bought something a little bigger. I've been working at this It's so easy. I was screwing the wrong way. Why isn't it going in?